Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from Cunningham, Kansas. Believe it or not, this town was named after the grandfather of Howard Cunningham. So that would have been Richie Cunningham's great-grandfather. Of course, after college, Howard moved to Milwaukee for work, and that's why the Cunninghams lived up there. But yeah, Joni and Richie's great-grandfather, Cunningham, Kansas, was named after. So, interesting little tidbit, I thought. So, today's November 2nd. It is, I try to say this right, the Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. Also, November 2nd, a few little anniversary things. Born on this day, 1966, David Schwimmer, from Friends, and also he was in Band of Brothers. I'm not sure what else he's been in, but hey, if that's all you got on your resume is 10 years on Friends and then Band of Brothers, I'm like, yeah, that's success for an actor. Also on this day, two presidents were born 70 years apart. In 1795, James Knox Polk, the 11th president, was born, and he would eventually be the president when we really got a lot of the territory in the Pacific coast, and also he was the president when the United States won the Mexican War, which you'd think if we won a war it would be called the United States War. I don't know how it got named after the losing country, but it did. So that he was the 11th president, and then, as I said, 70 years later, 1865, Warren G. Harding, the 29th president of the United States, was born. He was from Ohio. By the way, Knox was he was born in Mecklenburg, so Charlotte, North Carolina. His family moved to Tennessee, but he eventually attended the University of North Carolina, so he's a Tar Heel, and then he moved back to Tennessee, where he started his law career and political career. So back to Harding. Warren G. Harding, as everybody knows, Tanya Harding's grandfather. Harding died in office, and so he succeeded Woodrow Wilson, who almost died in office. And, his campaign slogan was "Return to Normalcy," the idea that, we're done with this big world war and, the Spanish influenza pandemic, global pandemic. Return to normalcy is his slogan. And the 20s were the roaring 20s for, a number of reasons. But later in that decade, the market crashed and the Great Depression began. There were a lot of things that were propped up by smoke and mirrors, if you will. But Harding dies in office, and after he dies, he's succeeded by Calvin Coolidge. Coolidge, what was I going to say about Coolidge? Oh, so after Harding passes away, it comes out that there's a whole bunch of scandals that his administration had going on. And the interesting thing is that back then, having a mistress was frowned upon by the American public. I'm not saying he was the first president to have a mistress, and he certainly wasn't the last, but it came out that he had one, and so he is generally adjudged one of the worst presidents in our history. So anyway, both Harding and Polk born on this day. What else? Oh, and on this day, November 2nd, 1976, Jimmy Carter is elected. Election day was on November 2nd in 1976. Jimmy Carter's elected. I wasn't old enough to vote, and to be honest with you, had I been, I probably would have voted for Jerry Ford. And I'm glad I wasn't, because, you know, in retrospect, you know, I don't think Ford would have been a good choice. And I, you know, so that's just me. Although, and then in 1980, I was old enough to vote, and I voted for Ronald Reagan. And Carter lost re-election. So my apologies to President Carter, because I think he's a wonderful, wonderful human being, and I wish him well. And I think I talked about it recently. He just had his 99th birthday. Okay, so let's talk about trucking for a little bit. I want to talk about two things. One is this speed limiter proposal by the FMCSA. Now, they did a release, or there was something on their website where they basically said, hey, it's going to be 68 miles an hour. And then they retracted that, like they took it down. But, you know, I was like, all right, 68. I don't do 68. But I realized that, and things in Canada aren't the same as they are in the United States. But I realized that, you know, because the Canadians have speed limiters in some provinces, and I don't think it's a system that works great for them, like the enforcement component of it especially. And you know, my view on rules is, what's the point in having them if you don't enforce them? Like, why bother to make a rule if there's no consequence for not obeying the rule? So what I've kind of concluded, and I know my opinion matters a lot in Washington, but what I've concluded is that it would probably be an enormous amount of brain damage to try, even if you said, okay, we're going to grandfather every truck that's on the road, but every new truck is going to come out with a speed limiter. First of all, I don't think that would satisfy the people that think that speeds need to be reduced for commercial vehicles. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the idea of trying to retrofit every commercial vehicle on the road, you know, that would be, I mean, now, if I was a company making speed limiters, I'd be pushing for this big time, because that would be a bonanza. It would be like winning the lottery. But I think the logistics of that, the idea that we got to get every truck in America in a shop, and even if it's for 10 minutes, let's say it was only 10 minutes, and all they did was put a wood block under the pedal, right? If that was the speed limiter technology, right? I mean, I still think that would be a huge ask. So here's what I propose instead of speed limiters. I would be, as a professional driver and as a human being, I would be happy if everybody just obeyed the speed limit. Now, I know what you're saying, but Terry, that's not human nature, right? And, you know, studies have shown that just lowering speed limits will save lives, right? Because it reduces the severity of crashes. So the first thing I would do is I think I would, at the federal level, just say, look, it is insane for vehicles to go like 80 miles an hour legally, which of course we all know means vehicles are routinely going like 90 or above, right? I would say there's a percentage of the population, there's probably, you know, and if I had to put a number on it, I'd say at least 5% of people on the road drive 15 or more over the posted speed limit on a regular basis. Maybe not every second, but on a regular basis. Then I would say another like 25% are driving at least 10 over. And then probably 50% or more are driving, 5 to 10 over. Okay? So we know that studies have shown this, right? No, whatever the speed limit is, people are going to exceed it at some level, right? And it's based largely on what they think enforcement will look like. And I think most Americans who drive think that, hey, 5 miles over is never going to get you a ticket, because I think it's exceedingly rare that somebody at 5 miles over gets a ticket. Speed cameras in most jurisdictions, they don't snap a picture until you're 10 over. Okay, so it's like we're saying, hey, and I've even been in court when I've heard judges say, hey, look, I don't want you guys coming in here with somebody going under 8 over. Meaning, if it was a 55, I don't want to see anybody that's doing 63 or less, right? So, across the board, right? Cops don't enforce it at 2 miles over. Judges are not going to allow it in a lot of cases. The public's just going to go faster. So, knowing that, I think that knowing that people are going to go 90 and not really think their speed, like there was a kid pulled over in one of these states out here in the center of the country. I can't remember which one, but he was pulled over doing 106, and I'm like, what? And the reason I know this is it was in a local newspaper, local TV station. I'm like, why is that newsworthy? People pass me all the time going that fast. Like, that's routine. I'm not saying everybody's doing it, but it is a daily occurrence that somebody will go by you going 100 miles an hour. So, with all that in mind, what I think would be a better solution is to have a maximum national speed limit of, and let's be liberal about this. Let's say 75 miles an hour. But then enforce it. And the way to enforce it with commercial vehicles is not to have some trooper sitting in the median, right? That's not enforcement. That's deterrence, but it's not enforcement. Because everybody's going to get on the CB radio. Everybody's going to flash their lights. Only the most unlucky people, especially in commercial vehicles, will get stopped by that guy. So let's do away with that. But here's the technology that exists to really enforce speed limits, and I think this would make a huge difference. So we know people are going to speed. But we also know that in algebra, we learned how to do these word problems. Car A leaves the city at 10:10 and it's driving 60 miles an hour. Car B leaves the city at 10:20 and it's driving 63 miles an hour. How many miles do the cars get before car B, or 2, whatever I said, catches car 1 or A, right? In other words, we know how to calculate distance, speed, all that stuff, right? All we would have to do, and I think the federal government could give grants for this, because I think it could generate enormous amounts of revenue for states. Just have, and by the way, the technology already exists for this. There are a lot of places where they already have license plate readers, stationary license plate readers, like the Atlanta area has them, and has for quite a while. License plate readers, all it does is reads the license plate, date stamps, stamp and time, right down to the second. Another reader down the road, and it could be, there could be readers every, 50 miles, 25 miles, whatever, depending on the area, right? Like in Wyoming, across I-80, I put them like every 40 miles. right? You could quickly calculate the average speed that somebody covered a given distance. If that speed is higher on average than the posted speed limit, which by the way, if somebody's higher than average, they were really hauling ass, because that would take into that would be, unless they just didn't stop at any point, right? But if they stopped for some reason, like they stopped to get a sandwich or stopped to get fuel, and they still got there higher than the average speed or higher than the posted speed limit, they were speeding their ass off, right? And we would just say, okay, speed limit's 75. If you're going 76, you're getting a ticket. And if it's a commercial vehicle, make it some exorbitant fine. $300, $500. I don't know what the right number is. But, this would free up the police. They wouldn't have to worry about running radar. And people that said, hey, I need to do 75 to make a living. Okay, fine, do 75. But if you're averaging 76 miles an hour over a given distance, you're getting a ticket. And last time I went through Wyoming, I was doing like 75. I had just crested. I was just heading down a mountain, right? I'm doing like 75, and this dude goes flying past me. And by the way, the speed limit there is 75 because it's not 80 all the way across I-80 in Wyoming. So anyway, I think just averaging people's speed. Say, look, if you want to stop for 2 hours to lower your average speed, that's fine. And you can drive like a bat out of hell. And people say, oh, well, people would be incentivized to speed. Yeah, but they'd have to stop also. So it takes away the incentive. I used to drive in places that had tons of speed cameras, and I would drive like a bat out of hell in between the speed cameras. But see, my average speed would have been higher than the posted speed limit because I did drive like a bat out of hell between the cameras. And so my idea defeats that. So anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think. I just think slowing everybody down, and this would go for cars too, by the way. I'm not just talking about, everybody would be subject to these laws. I'm just talking about trucks would have significant fines for doing that. Fine everybody, and states could make a lot of money with this. And, no one's civil rights would be violated. We don't have to worry about cops searching people's cars for no good reason. It's just like, hey, just drive the speed limit. There you go. Okay, so let's talk about the economy of trucking. And I feel like I should start this corporate speak BS quote of like the month or the quarter. Because every quarter, some chucklehead CEO of a company, trucking company, whose company just performed horribly, comes out and says a bunch of, corporate gobbledygook that means nothing. And, it's like, and they announce, it was like, not to pick on US Express, but it was like Variant, right? Variant was smoke and mirrors. It's like, oh, we're going to start a new company in this company. Why? Why don't you just do what you're supposed to do, and like every other trucking company does, and just, make money, right? Like, why do you have to start up something inside your own company that's all of a sudden going to be the latest and greatest flavor of the day, and then we all know what happened. So this is a quote from Tom Schmidt, who is he's the CEO of Forward Air. And by the way, the last time I talked about Forward Air and Omni, the brokerage or the freight forwarder getting together, I think I said the wrong company. I should have said Forward Air. Somebody pointed that out in the comments, so I appreciate that. I think I might have said, I don't know, whatever one of those other companies, Fast Forward or I don't even know. Anyway, so this is Forward Air. And this is him speaking, and let me just set this up. They had a quarterly earnings call for the third quarter. Their earnings were down 82% and change. Their earnings per share was 99 cents. A year ago, it was $1.93 per share. Analysts were expecting $1.10 earnings per share for Forward Air. But he was, this is him speaking on the Grow Forward initiative. And get it? Grow Forward? Because they're Forward Air. He said, and here's the quote, "It's about rigorous focus on high-value freight, priced appropriately with industry-leading service in a cleansed operating environment and accessing a larger customer and revenue base." Okay, so I'm gonna, cause I've been in the corporate world occasionally in my life, and let me just parse this and, in my mind, and then translate it for you. What he's basically saying is we're going to try to find business that pays us more and grow our company. That's it. But the interesting thing is he said a rigorous focus, not just any focus, a rigorous focus. High value freight. And by the way, freight, okay, this kind of grates my gears a little bit, but freight by definition means the price that a shipper pays to have cargo moved by a for-hire carrier. Like the term freighter, as in a ship, that term was coined to distinguish it from like a collier or a passenger ship. In other words, a freighter was a ship that would take stuff from anybody. It wasn't a ship that was dedicated to something. Okay? So anyway, but those people use those terms interchangeably. I'm not gonna get, well, I am amped up about it, I think you can tell. Priced appropriately, meaning we're gonna price it as high as we possibly can without pissing people off, with industry-leading service. Because who wants to hire a trucking company that says, look, we have service, it's sort of good. I mean, it's probably, it's industry median service. It's in the middle. We're not the worst, we're not the best, but we're fine. In a cleansed operating environment. I got no effing clue what that means. Cleansed, and that I'm not misquoting him, unless the article that I got this from misquoted him. Cleansed operating environment. I don't know if that means like cleansed in a religious sense, like all the truck drivers have been blessed by the Pope. I don't know if that means their trucks have been, disinfected. I don't know what that means. And accessing a larger customer and revenue base. Yeah, because no other company would have thought of that. No other company I could think of wants more customers and better revenue. Anyway, that's the corporate speak of the quarter from Tom Schmidt over at Forward Air. Okay, so one more item. For a while, a few years ago, myself and a number of people at Prime who had YouTube channels would always get these comments like, you guys are morons, you're hauling cheap freight. I'm making $5 a mile with a 50-cent fuel surcharge, and I'm killing it and you guys aren't, and therefore you suck. Well, of course, all those commenters have kind of gone away. Because all these people that went and got their own authority are, a lot of them have found out the hard way that it's not as easy as it looks. And so just to give you an idea though, we still have way too many people with operating authority, way too many businesses with operating authority. And the funny thing is I don't think they're hurting each other. They're not hurting the mega carriers. They're not even hurting the carriers that aren't mega, but are just milli. Like say a carrier with 800 trucks or 900 trucks, right? They're not hurting those carriers. They're hurting each other, right? They're like one guy's chewing on a guy's head while that guy that's getting chewed on is chewing on somebody else's head, right? They're just hurting each other. So in January 2020, there was 255,000 operating authorities. So that means 255,000 entities of some size had operating authority in the United States. As of today, and this is after we've lost tens of thousands of operating authorities have been relinquished, right? There's still 363,000 operating authorities. And like I said, I think I said this the other day, people are predicting that it's going to take another year to get rid of excess capacity. But all these people that go on the spot market, the average spot rate as of today or this week, average spot rate, $1.54 a mile. That's the average spot rate. And you know what the average means? There are people out there taking jobs for $1 a mile. And, and they're taking jobs for 97 cents a mile. And they're probably still driving like a bat out of hell, but that's another, that's a previous discussion. And my concern about this, and I don't want to sound like I'm gloating. What I do want to sound like is that, this environment is tough, and it should be a lesson to people who maybe are just getting into trucking. The next time around, there's gonna be, we're gonna be in Fat City again. But all of these spikes where rates just go through the roof, they typically only last a year or so. The one we're recovering from right now, the one that got these 363,000 operating authority people, in on the party, that lasted more like 2 years, but that's not the norm. So the next time you see rates, and they will, it might be a year or two from now, but you're gonna see rates spike up. And if you're like, oh man, I'm, owner op at Prime, I'm only getting $2.70 a mile on this load, but I could, they brokered the same load to somebody else for $4.25. Man, I'm getting my own authority. Don't fall for it, because the person who got the $4.25, or like the person that got the $5 a year and a half ago per mile, they might not even be in business right now. If you're here for the long haul, pun intended, you can't chase something that's already, you don't chase a train that's already left the station. I've said that before. Now, the concern for all of us, though, is that there is a spot market and / contract rate inversion right now. What that means is contract rates are higher. Candidly, for my business, I hope another 100,000 independent contractors that are just out there on the spot market. I hope another 100,000 lose their authority over the next 6 to 8 months. Why? Because that's going to prevent contract rates from dropping too low. The vast majority of the cargo that I carry is based on contract rates, as is anybody that works at Prime or works with Prime. So I'm sorry that I'm, being hard on people, but it's just, it's life in the big city, right? It's dog eat dog. Hopefully that doesn't have to happen, but because the crazy thing is the U.S. consumer is still spending at a pretty significant clip. So hopefully things kind of, balance out and get better. But, just, I can't say it enough. don't chase the train that already left the station. You got to be in the station when the train pulls in if you want to get on it. So anyway, I will talk to you guys soon. Be safe, and I'll be in the global corporate headquarters tomorrow sometime. And if you see me, say hi. If you like me, if you don't like me, just I don't know. It's okay too. Talk to you later.